For 7 seasons, Hill Street Blues showed us officers risking everything to survive another day on the streets. Characters like Frank Furillo, Joyce Davenport, and Howard Hunter became television legends as they battled crime, corruption, and personal demons. But the darkest stories weren't written by the show's writers. After fame faded, the cast faced devastating illnesses, heartbreaking tragedies, and lives that changed forever. Here's what happened to them then and now, and some of these stories are harder to believe than any episode of the show. Torian Black as Detective Neil Washington. Detective Neil Washington is compassion behind the badge, the dependable detective whose warmth and humanity helped make Hill Street Blues more than just another police drama. Torian Black, born May 10, 1940, was 41 when the series premiered in 1981, and his performance earned an Emmy nomination in 1982. Washington was loyal, thoughtful, and deeply committed to helping people, qualities that made him one of the show's most beloved characters. But what happened after the series ended revealed an even more remarkable story than the one audiences saw on television. Torian Black spent his later years living quietly in Atlanta, Georgia, surrounded by the large family he had spent decades building. Sadly, he passed away on July 21, 2022, at the age of 82 following a brief illness. Beyond Hill Street Blues, he also appeared in Deep Star 6 and provided the voice of Roscoe in Disney's Oliver and Company. Yet his greatest impact came away from Hollywood. After the collapse of his marriage to Shelby, he became a national spokesperson for adoption services and dedicated much of his life to helping orphaned children find permanent homes. He eventually adopted 10 children himself and raised a family of 12 children and 18 grandchildren. That mission became far more important to him than fame or awards, and it remained the defining purpose of his later years. In the end, his greatest legacy was not the badge he wore on television, but the lives he changed away from it. Daniel J. Travanti as Captain Frank Furillo. Few television captains carried more responsibility than Frank Furillo, the steady leader who spent every episode trying to keep order inside one of television's most chaotic police precincts. Daniel J. Travanti, born March 7, 1940, was 41 when Hill Street Blues premiered in 1981, and his performance turned Furillo into the heart of the series. Intelligent, disciplined, and quietly respected, the character helped redefine what a television police commander could be, earning Travanti 2 consecutive Primetime Emmy Awards and a Golden Globe at the height of the show's success. But while Furillo always seemed in control on screen, the years after the series followed a much quieter path. In 2026, Travanti is 86 years old and lives a private life in Wisconsin after completely retiring from acting. He no longer appears in new productions and spends most of his time away from public attention while managing the natural physical challenges that come with age. Behind his award-winning career, however, Travanti fought a difficult battle with alcoholism during the 1980s, a struggle he ultimately overcame before choosing a life far removed from Hollywood. Beyond Hill Street Blues, he also appeared in projects such as Adam and Missing Persons, but no role ever surpassed the impact of Frank Furillo. In the end, the man who spent years holding a fictional precinct together found happiness by stepping away from the spotlight altogether. James Sicking as Lieutenant Howard Hunter. If Hill Street Blues had one character capable of making audiences laugh and feel nervous at the same time, it was Lieutenant Howard Hunter, the military-obsessed commander whose intensity made him impossible to forget. James Sicking, born March 5, 1934, was 47 when the series premiered in 1981, and his performance earned an Emmy nomination in 1984 while turning Hunter into one of the show's most colorful personalities. But after decades in television, the final chapter of his life became increasingly difficult. James Sicking passed away on July 13, 2024, at the age of 90 after years of declining health caused by Alzheimer's disease. By then, his acting career had long since ended, and he spent his final years at his Los Angeles home, surrounded by the care of his wife, Florine Kaplan, and their children. Their marriage, which began in 1953, lasted more than 70 years and became one of the longest-lasting relationships in Hollywood. As Alzheimer's slowly robbed him of his memories and independence, his family remained by his side until the very end. Beyond Hill Street Blues and Doogie Howser, M.D., Sicking built a career spanning more than 5 decades, but his final years were defined less by fame than by the quiet support of those who loved him. He left behind not only memorable characters, but a life marked by loyalty, resilience, and enduring family devotion. Michael Warren as Officer Bobby Hill. For many viewers, Bobby Hill was the steady heartbeat of Hill Street Blues, a dependable officer whose professionalism and quiet confidence helped balance the chaos surrounding him. Michael Warren, born March 5, 1946, was 35 when the series premiered in 1981, and his performance earned him an Emmy nomination while turning Bobby Hill into one of the show's most respected characters. But while Bobby Hill spent years serving on television's most famous police force, Warren eventually traded Hollywood for family life. In 2026, he is 80 years old and fully retired from acting, living a quieter life centered around his children and grandchildren. As age has brought the natural physical challenges common to former athletes, he now spends much of his time enjoying family, including his son Cash Warren, whose marriage to actress Jessica Alba made the family part of one of Hollywood's most recognizable celebrity circles. Although he appeared in projects such as City of Angels and Soul Food, Hill Street Blues remains the role most closely associated with his career. In the end, the man who once protected the streets of television found his greatest reward in the family he helped build. Bruce Weitz as Sergeant Mick Belker. Nobody in Hill Street Blues was stranger, louder, or more unpredictable than Sergeant Mick Belker, the scruffy undercover detective whose growls, odd behavior, and relentless determination made him one of the show's most unforgettable characters. Bruce Weitz, born May 27, 1943, was 38 when the series premiered in 1981, and his performance became so popular that it earned him a Primetime Emmy Award in 1984 after several consecutive nominations. Beneath Belker's eccentric personality was a fiercely loyal officer who always managed to get results, giving the series both humor and heart. But while Belker thrived on chaos, Weitz eventually embraced a much quieter life. In 2026, he is 82 years old and fully retired from acting, living peacefully in Los Angeles away from the entertainment industry. Although he faces some age-related joint and mobility issues, he remains mentally sharp and enjoys a stable family life with his wife Vivian Davis, whom he married in 1986. His personal life was not always so settled, however. His first marriage to actress Cecilia Hart ended in divorce in 1980 before he later found lasting happiness with Davis. Beyond Hill Street Blues, Weitz appeared in series such as Murder, She Wrote, and NYPD Blue, but no role ever eclipsed Mick Belker. Today, his story stands as a rare example of a television star who found greater happiness away from the spotlight than within it. Barbara Bosson as Faye Furillo. Long before television embraced complex female characters, Faye Furillo showed audiences the emotional cost of loving someone whose job always came first. Barbara Bosson, born January 1, 1939, was 42 when Hill Street Blues premiered in 1981, and her nuanced portrayal earned an extraordinary 5 consecutive Emmy nominations. As the estranged wife of Frank Furillo, Faye brought vulnerability, frustration, and realism to one of the show's most important relationships, proving that some of the strongest drama happened far away from the police station. But after decades in television, Bosson's final years became much quieter. She passed away on February 18, 2023, at the age of 83 from natural causes while living in Los Angeles, surrounded by her family. By then, she had long stepped away from acting and was enjoying retirement with her children and grandchildren. Away from the cameras, Bosson's life was deeply connected to Hill Street Blues through her marriage to legendary producer Steven Bochco, whom she married in 1970 and had 2 children with before their painful divorce in 1997. The emotional impact of that separation stayed with her for years, and the death of Bochco in 2018 brought another difficult chapter. Beyond Hill Street Blues, she also earned acclaim for Murder One, receiving yet another Emmy nomination and cementing her reputation as one of television's finest supporting actresses. Decades later, her performances remain a reminder that some of television's most memorable characters never needed a badge to leave a lasting impression. Keel Martin as Detective J.D. LaRue. If Hill Street Blues had a detective who always seemed one bad decision away from trouble, it was J.D. LaRue, the flawed but charismatic officer whose personal weaknesses made him one of the series' most fascinating characters. Keel Martin, born July 26, 1944, was 37 when the show premiered in 1981, and his portrayal of LaRue became the defining role of his career. The character's struggles with temptation, poor judgment, and self-destruction often created some of the series' most memorable storylines, giving Martin a role that audiences never forgot. Tragically, his own story would prove even sadder. Martin passed away on December 28, 1990, at the age of 46 after battling terminal lung cancer. By the time of his death, he was living in Rancho Mirage, California, and much of the success he had enjoyed during the height of the series had already faded. Away from the cameras, Martin endured 3 failed marriages to Claudia Martin, Joanne Roder, and Stefaniana Christopherson, and was the father of 1 daughter. As his career slowed after Hill Street Blues, years of heavy smoking and chronic alcoholism took a devastating toll on both his health and finances. His final months were marked by illness, isolation, and mounting medical expenses that consumed much of what he had earned. Looking back, the tragedy of Keel Martin is that the troubled detective he portrayed on television often seemed far less lost than the man himself. Joe Spano as Lieutenant Henry Goldblum. Among the many strong personalities inside the precinct, Henry Goldblum was often the voice of reason, the thoughtful lieutenant whose intelligence and compassion helped balance the chaos of Hill Street Blues. Joe Spano, born July 7, 1946, was 35 when the series premiered in 1981, and his performance earned him an Emmy nomination while establishing Goldblum as one of the show's most respected officers. Audiences admired the character's patience, professionalism, and ability to remain calm when tensions ran high. But unlike many of his co-stars, Spano's story after the series has been remarkably stable. In 2026, he is 80 years old and continues to enjoy relatively good health while living a quiet life with his wife, Joan Zarian, whom he married in 1980. The couple adopted 2 children and built one of the most enduring family lives among the cast. Although largely retired, Spano still occasionally accepts small guest roles and stage appearances simply for the love of acting. Beyond Hill Street Blues, modern audiences know him best as FBI agent Tobias Fornell on the long-running hit series NCIS, a role that introduced him to a new generation of viewers. Free from major scandals, financial troubles, or public controversies, Spano remains one of the rare cast members whose life after fame proved almost as steady as the character he played. Charles Haid as Officer Andy Renko. Few officers on Hill Street Blues looked tougher than Andy Renko, the street-smart patrolman whose rough exterior often hid loyalty, courage, and surprising humanity. Charles Haid, born June 2, 1943, was 38 when the series premiered in 1981, and his performance earned him 2 Emmy nominations while helping make Renko one of the show's most recognizable characters. Audiences connected with the character's blunt honesty and blue-collar toughness, but Haid's greatest success would eventually come behind the camera. In 2026, he is 83 years old and fully retired after a highly successful second career as a television director. Following his acting years, he directed episodes of major series including ER, NYPD Blue, and Criminal Minds, earning a Directors Guild of America award and establishing himself as one of television's most respected directors. Today, he lives a private life surrounded by family after stepping away from the industry due to declining health and the natural effects of aging. His personal life included marriages to Penelope Windust and later Elizabeth Harmon Hade, whose death in 2019 left a deep emotional void during his later years. While many actors struggle after leaving a signature role behind, Hyde successfully reinvented himself and built a second legacy that rivaled his acting career. These days, the former officer of television's toughest precinct is best known as a devoted father, grandfather, and filmmaker whose influence reached far beyond the screen. René Enriquez as Lieutenant Ray Cayetano. At a time when Latino actors rarely occupied positions of authority on American television, Lieutenant Ray Cayetano stood out as a respected leader whose presence quietly broke barriers. René Enriquez, born November 24, 1933, was 48 when Hill Street Blues premiered in 1981, and his portrayal helped pave the way for future generations of minority actors in television drama. Cayetano brought professionalism, intelligence, and credibility to the precinct, making him one of the show's most important authority figures. But while the character projected strength, Enriquez's final years became a heartbreaking struggle. He passed away on March 23, 1990, at the age of 56 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. By 1989, his illness had become so severe that he was forced to stop acting entirely, ending a career that had helped open doors for Latino performers across the industry. He spent his final months in Tarzana, California, under close medical care from family members and loved ones. Unlike many of his colleagues, Enriquez never married and lived a largely private life away from Hollywood publicity. Later reports also suggested he faced complications associated with the AIDS crisis that devastated countless lives during that era, adding another painful dimension to his final years. Although his career was cut tragically short, his contribution to television representation remains impossible to overlook, and his influence can still be seen in the generations of actors who followed. Michael Conrad as Sergeant Phil Esterhaus. Every episode of Hill Street Blues seemed to begin with the same reassuring voice, and for millions of viewers, Sergeant Phil Esterhaus became the moral center of the entire series. Michael Conrad, born October 16, 1925, was 56 when the show premiered in 1981, and his portrayal earned him 2 consecutive Primetime Emmy Awards in 1981 and 1982. His famous line, "Let's be careful out there," became one of the most iconic catchphrases in television history and helped transform Esterhaus into a beloved symbol of wisdom, leadership, and compassion. Tragically, the success of the series coincided with the most difficult period of Conrad's life. He passed away on November 22, 1983, at the age of 58 in Los Angeles, after battling advanced colorectal cancer. By the final stage of his illness, his health had deteriorated so severely that continuing to film became physically exhausting, yet he remained committed to completing his work whenever possible. Away from the cameras, Conrad shared his life with his wife, Emily Conrad, who stood beside him throughout his battle with cancer. As chemotherapy treatments and constant pain gradually weakened him, the cast and crew watched one of the show's most respected figures fight a battle he could not win. His death was so devastating that the series created a special tribute episode to honor both the actor and the character. More than 40 years later, that simple farewell message he delivered at the end of every briefing still remains one of television's most enduring memories. Ed Marinaro as Officer Joe Coffey. With his athletic build and natural charisma, Officer Joe Coffey brought a different kind of energy to Hill Street Blues, combining toughness, confidence, and street-level determination into one of the precinct's most memorable officers. Ed Marinaro, born March 31, 1950, was only 31 when the series premiered in 1981, and the role helped establish him as a serious actor after he had already gained national attention as a football star. Long before Hollywood, Marinaro finished second in the 1971 Heisman Trophy voting and built a reputation as one of college football's elite players. But while Joe Coffey spent his days chasing criminals, Marinaro's life after the series became far more relaxed. In 2026, he is 76 years old and still enjoys relatively good health, thanks in part to the discipline he developed as an athlete. Although old football injuries occasionally cause discomfort, he remains active, regularly appearing at fan conventions, autograph events, and football-related appearances. Since marrying Tracy York in 2001, he has enjoyed a stable and happy family life, free from the scandals and financial troubles that affected many television stars of his era. Beyond Hill Street Blues, audiences also remember him from Sisters and numerous sports broadcasts. But the role of Joe Coffey remains his most important acting breakthrough. Decades later, he remains one of the few cast members still enjoying both the rewards of success and the peace that came after it. Robert Prosky, as Sergeant Stan Jablonski, stepping into Hill Street Blues after the death of Michael Conrad was never going to be an easy task. But Sergeant Stan Jablonski brought a different kind of authority to the precinct, less fatherly perhaps, but just as dependable. Robert Prosky, born October 13, 1930, was 54 when he joined the series in 1984, and his performance helped stabilize the show during one of its most difficult transitions. His success later expanded to the big screen through memorable roles in films such as The Natural and Mrs. Doubtfire. But while Jablonski remained a reassuring presence on screen, Prosky's final years were marked by declining health. He passed away on December 8, 2008, at the age of 77 following complications after major heart surgery. Throughout his later years, he continued supporting the theater community in Washington, D.C., despite battling serious heart problems. Away from the spotlight, Prosky shared a remarkably stable family life with his wife Ida Hove, whom he married in 1960, and together they raised 3 sons. Even as his health worsened, he remained committed to the craft he loved for nearly 5 decades. Few actors moved so effortlessly between stage, television, and film, and his legacy continues to live on through the countless characters he brought to life. Betty Thomas as Officer Lucy Bates. Long before becoming one of Hollywood's most successful female directors, Betty Thomas won audiences over as Lucy Bates, the determined officer whose intelligence, humor, and resilience made her one of Hill Street Blues' most beloved characters. Betty Thomas, born July 27, 1947, was 34 when the series premiered in 1981, and her performance earned an impressive 7 Emmy nominations, including 1 victory. Lucy's journey from rookie officer to seasoned member of the precinct mirrored Thomas's own rise in the entertainment industry. But while many actors struggle to escape a defining television role, Thomas accomplished something even rarer. In 2026, she is 78 years old and living quietly in California after largely stepping away from major directing projects. Although age and declining stamina have limited her ability to lead large-scale productions, she occasionally serves as a creative consultant and remains highly respected throughout the industry. Following the end of her marriage to Douglas Thomas, she embraced a more independent lifestyle and largely avoided the public drama that often surrounds Hollywood careers. Beyond Hill Street Blues, she reinvented herself as a director, finding enormous success with films such as The Brady Bunch movie and Dr. Dolittle, becoming one of the highest-grossing female directors of her era. While the industry has often been less welcoming to older women behind the camera, her influence can still be felt in the generations of female filmmakers who followed her path. Today, her career stands as proof that sometimes the most remarkable second act begins after the spotlight shifts. Ken Olin as Detective Harry Garibaldi. Ken Olin as Detective Harry Garibaldi. Unlike many of the officers in Hill Street Blues, Harry Garibaldi often felt like a man carrying as many personal questions as professional responsibilities, and that quiet complexity helped make him stand out. Ken Olin, born July 30th, 1954, was 27 when he joined the series in 1981, and the role became one of the first major stepping stones in a career that would eventually extend far beyond acting. With his thoughtful screen presence and natural charisma, Olin quickly established himself as a rising television talent. But while many viewers remember him as an actor, the second half of his career took a very different direction. In 2026, Olin is 72 years old and remains one of the most successful behind-the-scenes figures to emerge from the Hill Street Blues cast. Although he occasionally appears on screen, his primary focus has long been producing and directing major television projects, including Alias, Brothers and Sisters, Sleepy Hollow, and This Is Us, the latter earning him Emmy recognition as a producer. Away from Hollywood, Olin has enjoyed one of the entertainment industry's most enduring marriages, remaining with actress Patricia Wettig since 1982. Together they raised 2 children, Clifford Olin and Roxanne Olin, both of whom followed creative paths of their own. Veronica Hamill as Joyce Davenport. Long before strong female attorneys became common on television, Joyce Davenport proved that intelligence, determination, and moral conviction could be just as compelling as a badge or a gun. Veronica Hamill, born November 20th, 1943, was 38 when Hill Street Blues premiered in 1981, and her portrayal of the fiercely independent public defender earned her 5 Emmy nominations over the course of the series. Davenport brought strength, compassion, and sharp legal instincts to the show, often challenging the police officers around her while remaining one of the precinct's most trusted allies. But while Joyce Davenport spent years fighting for justice on screen, Hamill gradually stepped away from public life altogether. In 2026, she is 82 years old and lives a highly private life, largely removed from both Hollywood and the media. She rarely makes public appearances and spends her time quietly managing the challenges that come with age, including arthritis and reduced mobility. Away from the cameras, her personal life changed dramatically when her marriage to Michael Irving ended in divorce in 1981, just as Hill Street Blues was beginning its rise to success. The emotional impact of that breakup led her to remain single for the rest of her life, and she never had children. As the years passed, she became increasingly protective of her privacy, choosing independence over celebrity and solitude over attention. Even decades later, her career remains a reminder that some of television's strongest characters were powered not by force, but by conviction. So, that's the Hill Street Blues cast then and now. Over the decades, some found lasting success, some faced heartbreaking losses, and others quietly stepped away from the spotlight forever. Which cast member's journey surprised you the most after all these years? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more then and now stories from television's greatest classics.